Hello and welcome to the Design Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whyte, and in this podcast series, we explore the career journeys of design and engineering leaders from the world of physical product development. In this episode, I'm joined by Lea Stewart, Senior Manager for Baby and Parenting Products at Newell Brands. Amongst other things, we discuss her career journey to date, including the challenges she's overcome and the lessons she's learned along the way. We talk about being your authentic self, how to define success, and managing expectations in the hiring process. So as the music fades, it's time to make yourself comfortable as we get on with the show. Welcome back to the Design Journeys podcast. Today I'm joined by Lea Stewart. Lea is a Senior Manager for Baby and Parenting Products at Newell Brands, based in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Her career has spanned various industries, including commercial products, furniture, lighting, juvenile, commercial, medical, packaging, and display design, to name a few. She is also an accomplished public speaker and IDSA chair. Her speaking topics encompass design leadership, women in design, the value of design, design methodologies, foresight, futures, and much more. Lea has received several industry awards and recognitions for innovative product designs, including the Red Dot Award, IDEA Gold Award, and Good Design Award, to name but a few. Lea, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here.
It's great to have you, and I'm really looking forward to diving into this. And thank you for giving up your time. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? How and why did you choose to study industrial design?
Well, part of this is likely a path that a lot of people took, but I have a little funny story to go with it. So my high school was public high school in New Jersey, and just so happened to have an architectural drafting elective. There was one computer that had like one seat of AutoCAD on it, and I just got really into it. But I thought that the spaces, designing spaces I really loved because it was thinking about the user, but it was kind of large. So I started looking for colleges that had architecture, and on one of the college tours, the guy who was leading the tour was very good looking, and it made me even more love what he was saying because I was 17. And he took me through the industrial design program, and I fell in love with it. And luckily for me that, some of those like emotional pull decisions are the right ones. And I ended up, at that school in that program. And here I am today, 24-ish years later.
Wow. So you ended up falling in love with design, not just the tutor.
Yeah. No, once I actually started the program, the shine was gone on that part of it. But it's like that funny thing in my mind that you never know what's going to make you choose something when you're that age. You don't really know what you want to be when you grow up, and it was a lot harder back then as well. It wasn't as easy to search for programs or see examples of work like it is today. So I think students searching for colleges and programs have a lot more opportunity to learn before they start in a program.
Absolutely, yeah. And you look at the world that we live in today with TikTok and LinkedIn and Instagram, and it's so easy to share stories and inspire people. Back when we were at school, it was kind of a prospectus, or you might have a career guidance, but it's like, depending on where you grew up, would depend on kind of what opportunities you were kind of shown off to. Engineering in my town was working in the power station or down at a coal mine. So it's a bit of a world away from the product design I know now. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting then that you started off thinking about architecture, then shifted to industrial design. I've spoken to many people who started thinking about car design and doing a car design course, and then figuring out that they're actually not as passionate about car design as some of their peers, so they end up going down the industrial design route. But
I'm sure you find this too, that I'd say half of the folks that I graduated with started in either graphic design or architecture. The college I went to specialized in both of those majors. but then they would learn about industrial design from seeing it on campus and then want to switch into it. It was just a matter of not knowing about it or not knowing enough about it before you got there. I think a lot of schools have this too, where you might do foundational courses in your first year that are all together. And that's the way it was at the school that I went to. So it was all mixed, like everyone that was in that kind of bachelor's of science design type course took the same courses first year.
Yeah, I mean, I never studied design, but it was similar for me where, year one, there's a big cohort across different business studies and management and marketing. You met lots of different people, and then as you progress through your career, that kind of group of people that you saw from class to class got smaller and smaller as people specialised. So interesting. So did you maintain any kind of architecture work during your degree, or was it a complete break?
Complete break. Yeah,
what was some of the highlights then in terms of projects that you remember from university?
That is a really good question. I mean, my thesis project, of course, which was around sustainable footwear.
Okay.
I think I still love that project. But, I think that I got a lot of variety, and there were a lot of electives as well. So I did furniture, I did products. I only did one product for children, which is interesting that, I'm in that kind of world now, but it wasn't really a focus or a specialty. And I had those projects like many students probably do of like, make this thing, but make it ergonomic. Mine was a dish brush, which I did not love that project. And then another typical one that I see a lot in portfolios is like, here, take a product and then give it either a brand or pretend that some other like famous designer designed this. So you're designing in the style of someone else or something else. So I had a whole series of humidifiers that were like, this one's Karim Rashid, and this one's, some other famous designer. So that was fun.
It's interesting. I imagine that happening today would be a lot of abuse of ChatGPT, or the whatever the graphic version of it is. Just make this look like someone else has done it, which.
I actually tried it last year. I took the same project and compared my student work versus just putting it into, I think I was using Midjourney. And what worked best was kind of a combination of, my original design plus, using the text prompt on top of it. Because I don't think that the AI is exactly trained enough to know Karim Rashid.
No, and I mean, you see some of the really interesting output from AI, and you have to account for extra limbs or kind of things that don't make sense in physics. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, throughout my recruitment career, speaking to product designers and design engineers throughout their journeys, and I've seen a lot of university portfolios that have got the can crusher, but Loughborough just seemed to, for a while, just set their students a can crusher project. So I've seen hundreds of those. So it's just some things will never change.
The ergonomic ice cream scoop is the one that I see quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously there's the big in terms of inclusive design, the potato peeler. I guess that's kind of a classic, isn't it? In terms of the is it the OXO one? But the ergonomic side of things, was it kind of driven by that, or was it more of an exercise in form?
I think it's a practice, those kinds of projects, and I still see this today. It's a practice in how you would approach it. So it doesn't even matter what the object is, but how am I going to learn how people are using it now? What are the problems? Making prototypes, assessing it. So making sure that you're getting physical with your concepts and iterating on that. And I think that's the point of those kinds of projects, more so than the market really needs a more ergonomic ice cream scoop. And the peeler maybe was a better example because, long periods of time, strenuous, kind of odd usage of your hands.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So, brilliant. So, a solid foundation then, and a little glimpse into your future doing the one juvenile product. So, perhaps you could talk us through kind of your journey from there. Then, kind of some of the kind of the highlights through your career, some of the challenges that you faced along the way, because you've worked for some great companies. See Cola on there, Masco, some of the companies that I'm not too familiar with, but yeah, perhaps you could talk us through it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you mentioned some of the big ones that, I've been working for Newell Brands for almost 12 years. So I'll kind of start there. That you mentioned that I lead the business of baby and parenting. So that's everything from car seats, strollers, also smaller objects like pacifiers and bottles. And that's over all of design and our fashion CMF team, and also a few engineers that kind of aid the design group. So before that, I was working on commercial products also here at Newell. So different, but still helping with sort of people who have really hard jobs, which would be janitors for waste bins and cleaning carts and all kinds of things that help clean facilities. And so that was more of a B2B business. And that's actually more of my background, this sort of B2B relationship. Where at my previous company, Masco, I led the group that did everything related to kitchen renovations. So cabinetry, for example, if you were going to redo your whole house or bathroom, the layout, the planning, how it would be installed. So it was sold to either through stores like Lowe's and Home Depot, or much more often it was through builders or like a direct business relationship. And Kohler as well, with being on the plumbing side of things and home renovation. The brand that I worked on was their highest tier. So also was sold direct to architects and designers. So again, like a B2B relationship, but you're thinking about that end user. You noted that that the companies before that are less recognizable, and that's because earlier in my career it was just piecing it together, whatever I could get to get experience. And I graduated in 2002, which was not too long after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, which killed the economy, and no one was hiring. And design, it was uncertain, right? And that always kind of sees a dip in the design market when there's a lot of uncertainty. So I was doing a few hours here at a consulting firm, a few hours over here as a personal assistant. I mean, just trying to get anything. I started teaching courses in industrial design. And I did that for a few years of just trying to get anything on my portfolio, freelance work as well. And that's how I've landed the first full-time job at Kohler.
That must have been
several years. You had my resume in front of you, so I can't even remember. I'm trying to think, maybe 2000, maybe it was like 5 years later that I finally got that like solid industrial design full-time job.
Yeah, that must have been a really difficult period then. Lots of uncertainty and kind of, I guess, a lot of self-doubt kind of creeping in as well at that point. Kind of.
And more so because it wasn't just me. I mean, that was the whole, everyone I knew was sort of doing that as well, because there just wasn't as many jobs to be had. So, you're questioning, should I move across the country? Am I doing the wrong thing? Or is this okay? I'm filling my portfolio with lots of things. And I guess I'd give advice to anyone that, it's going to be okay. That, if you see something that interests you and you want to change your whole life and move across the country, but you don't have to. You can find a lot of creative opportunities anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. You just got to keep the faith, keep going. How did you land that first job then at Kohler? Talk us through kind of, because that must have been a relief.
Yeah, so I had been doing freelance work for a guy who used to be the head of design at that division of Kohler.
Okay.
And having that inside recommendation. So he was able to say, yeah, oh, wow, she's been doing freelance work for me. It's been great. And they trusted that opinion. So the other challenge with getting hired was it wasn't just the decision of the hiring manager, but of their boss who was across the country at their headquarters. So that person wasn't so sure about me. And so I got, I'm lucky that the hiring manager really believed enough in me that he was able to hire me as a contract role to do one project. And using that project then as sort of a test bed, I was able to secure the full-time job.
So you're in there.
I appreciated a couple things about that. I mean, it's going out on a limb to get the contract role, but also that they didn't just say, do a project and do it for free, which I do see a lot of that going on right now, because there's so many people looking for jobs that this kind of do a fake project thing is prolific.
Yeah, I had
actually paid for it was.
It's a great way if you can. Something. It can be quite nerve-wracking, I suppose, if you're applying for a bunch of things and a company says, "I like you. I'm struggling to get sign-off. Would you do a contract or a freelance role for a bit?" And you might end up taking a role, or there being a role that we can create. There'll be a lot of people be very nervous about that because of the uncertainty. But if you're in that situation, you've got nothing to lose. Take every opportunity you can. But yeah, what you're saying about the free doing a project for free, sometimes it's disguised as part of the interview process. I was interviewed by got a call out of the blue by a New York journalist the other week about a story you may have seen on LinkedIn. A certain I won't name them on here, but a certain tech startup in New York had caused quite a bit of controversy for their long-winded process, asking candidates to do a short, in air quotes, project, which ended up taking hours and hours. And it was quite interesting. It took one candidate to say no and then talk about it and then post online, and it caused all manner of fuss, which obviously as a nosy recruiter, I obviously put my 2 cents in there about.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that.
But that's really interesting. Yeah. So how would you what advice would you give to kind of people who are maybe feeling that situation now? Because we're going through a bit of a rough time for design right now, or for the economy in general, in terms of new products being signed off. But there'll be kind of graduates coming out now, or with a couple of years experience, who are really struggling. Any advice you would give them to help them kind of stand out from the crowd, or to get that kind of the first kind of big job, or just medium-sized job, I suppose most will take?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll reframe that and think that you don't have to get that big job right out of the gate. That now is one of the things that I told you, Chris, I wanted to speak about was, what does it even mean to be successful in design? And I think often because maybe because we see the big consulting firms that have the money to advertise as the goal, right? The sexy job and the amazing office for that well-known company. But there's so many other places you can work. They probably just don't have the means, or why would they promote their internal design roles in the same way, or design capabilities in the same way? So first is don't overlook those kind of creative opportunities. And actually, I was speaking on a panel maybe 2 years ago. It was to graduate students. It was sort of this commencement speech. I think they were still doing remote things for seniors that were graduating because of COVID. And the panel talk was supposed to be, rah, rah, everybody's graduating, amazing, give some advice. And there was someone else on the panel that was basically saying, you want to get that job at that whatever, IDEO,
Mm.
something like that. And I felt compelled to speak up, and because they said, you don't want to go work for some kind of like hose nozzle company, which I thought was really random.
Mm.
But then I'm thinking, so I spoke up and I said, well, what if that hose nozzle company is putting out all the fires in California and Canada? And what if that hose nozzle company is giving back money for every hose nozzle that they sell? And, I wouldn't overlook any company that might be really compelling. You just never know. So give it a chance.
I hope you drop the mic after that, because that's really put the cat amongst the pigeons.
My virtual
yeah. Yeah. It's like you got
thinking back to
muted.
even when I worked for, now you see it on my resume, you're like, ooh, Kohler. But I worked at a subsidiary that was in a concrete box on the side of a factory. I mean, it didn't have any windows. It was not designery at all.
Yeah.
But we made amazing things, and I worked with amazing people.
My cat's trying to get involved in the
podcast. I love that your cat's
Yeah. It's getting close to dinner time. We've just had the time change as well, so they're all confused. So they'll be bothering me for a bit. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's so many things that I've seen over the years where it's not until you start speaking to someone and you get into the detail about what they've done that actually it's so applicable to many different kind of products. Like, you take nozzles for an example. If there's valves in there, if there's plastic, so what if it's not like a mobile phone or kind of something really flashy?
Yeah.
That experience that you've had in terms of kind of designing for that particular application, the tolerances involved, you might have had to talk about valves. There's a technical aspect to that which is going to make you so much more valuable to someone who's just done casework or styling.
Very true.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've got another one that I was thinking of for you that when I was piecing it together and working at a consulting firm right out of school, that one I got because a professor of mine had heard that this 2-person consulting firm was needing someone part-time. So this was, let's say, 9 hours a week or something like that. I had to drive 2 hours each way.
Wow.
So on paper, and I got paid like nothing, minimum wage or something like that. So on paper, you're like, well, that's garbage, right? You're driving all that way, you're getting up at 4 a.m. It's only a couple days a week. But those 2 people spent their lunch hour almost every day, us eating together, educating me on anything I wanted to know. And they had been, they were much more experienced than me. So it was like getting an MBA. I mean, we went through everything: how to write a contract, how to get it, proposals, invoices, working with clients. It was, I can't imagine anyone at a very large firm sitting down with, the part-time person putting in that amount of time to educate them. So, that's another thing about like where to look or, what to think of as the value you're getting from that job, not just the flashy name on the resume.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it can be taken for granted or just ignored, I suppose, how well connected professors can be. Because I've been to lots of networking events where I'm there talking to industry professionals and business owners and VPs, and then the guys and girls that are making most of the conversation are those that are leading the university courses, because they probably taught some of those business owners. They're so well connected. So yeah, definitely stay in touch. And yeah, I've had countless conversations over the years that have led to that. And that kind of rings true for me as well in terms of my background. I mean, when I started off, I started my career in retail and I absolutely hated it. And I'd heard about recruitment and sales, and I didn't have any sales experience other than kind of selling frozen chips and peas to the general public. So I found a company that were taking on interns, and I did a free internship for 6 weeks with them, learned a bit about recruitment, and I kind of I quite like this. This is interesting. Took to it, and then I saw a a commission-only sales role. So I was working part-time in a hotel bar, and took this commission-only role. It's like selling financial products to expats over in Dubai. It was really weird, but it was like,
were you doing that remotely way back before anyone was doing that remotely?
It was totally remote. Well, it was working in an office in a town called Stone in the middle of England. So if anyone's listening that knows Stone in Staffordshire, they'll know it's a nice town, but it's small. But there's a post office in town, and above there, the company had rented this office, which when I joined them was absolutely gutted. There was nothing there. We were setting up computers, and we were just given a bunch of leads, having to call these wealthy expats, engineers and such over in Dubai, and try and get them to sit down with a financial planner. And that was my exposure to cold calling, kind of calling up kind of people overseas, trying to qualify them to make sure that they were they had the right capital and everything, and then saying, hey, sit down with this stranger and they'll sell you a pension. It pretty much was the job. And I loved the thrill of that. It was scary, but once you got a rapport going, it's like, okay, there's something here. And then that kind of segued then into recruitment. But if I hadn't taken that chance,
that gave you all the skills to get over the fear, to do the cold calling, to know that you were passionate about it as well. So,
I mean, it didn't seem it at the time that it was a good thing to do, because I was broke. I was earning certainly at the start of it, was earning hardly any money, and then a recruitment opportunity came up, and then that was that. But it's the same, like, I guess, for yourself, but with a design angle, it's like you've put yourself out there. You were flat broke, but soaking up all of that kind of, which is then
taking my half broken Dodge Neon up the turnpike 2 hours each way every day. Just put my life on the line. Yep. But I loved it.
Are you still in touch with those guys?
No, I mean they've been retired for a long time, and so only a little bit. But
yeah, that's a great
I should
story.
send them a link to this, and know they got a shout out. They'll love it. They'll love this story. I was interviewing, and I was dressed up. I didn't really have a whole lot of interview clothes because, like you said, I didn't have any money or anything. So I think I wore whatever was like my nicest khaki pants or something like that. And they were like, by the way, we're really casual here. You don't have to dress up. We wear jeans and everything. I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Because I feel like I'm like 50 years old today. And mind you, like both of them are older than 50 years old. So they thought this was hilarious that I just stuck my foot in my mouth by basically calling them old. So, yep. But I survived. I'm still, not my worst career fault ever, but a good story.
But you'll know this as well as anyone, that when you're interviewing someone, part of me, and I don't know if this rings true, part of me doesn't really care what their skill set is, as long as I can get on with them and see that they're coachable and that they're inquisitive and that
the soft skills.
I can work with them. I can teach them certain things. I can teach them skills. There's a given.
And it sold me even more that they were saying, you can show up as your authentic self. They could probably tell that that's not what I wore on a daily basis. And so I appreciate that. And it's, it's those things that you don't necessarily think about when you are first job hunting. Like, what is this job going to do to enable the rest of my life, or to enable my joy beyond the design, beyond the work? The job I have now, I've been here for, like I said, like 12 years, and sure, I could likely go find a step up in my career somewhere else if I wanted to shake it all up, but it does enable the rest of my life. I get to go do my weightlifting boot camp classes 4 or 5 days a week and pick my son up from school after school. I wish we all got out at 2:00 in the afternoon, but it's those things too. And do you like the people? Do you like being there?
Oh, massively, yeah. So on the topic of being your authentic self, and I guess dress code's always a question I get asked for people going to an interview, especially juniors. So how should I kind of dress to an interview? And
Oh, interesting.
I'm not personally. I just want people to come in and be comfortable, because in the office, this is who I am. I work on the phone. I work on Zoom. If you don't like the fact that I don't wear a tie, then it's probably not a good fit for us. So, but there are some people that think you've got to wear a suit. You go into an interview, you've got to dress. What's your take on that?
It might be that you got to read the room of that company. It's not going to be the same for every company. I mean, if you kind of can sense from looking at their profiles and LinkedIn that this is a suit culture, wear a suit. You can't go wrong with dressing up a little bit, but you also want to be comfortable. So you could dress something up, like put just a jacket on over something a little bit more casual. So I would not wear your bunny slippers and your leggings. But,
I'll note
unless
that.
maybe it's virtual, then you could do that on the bottom, which I definitely have done before, because it's you want to be comfortable too.
I am wearing slippers right now, so
It would
but
definitely be if I was not in the office.
Yeah, awesome. And talk us through then because I presume you interview people at when you are hiring, and so what can someone expect kind of coming through that process to maybe join your team when you are hiring?
Oh yeah, great question. So yes, I had been the head of our design hiring committee for a few years. Kind of handed over the baton as the head of it in the past year or two, but I still am very involved. And I was analyzing a couple things. I was lucky to work with our talent acquisition people that could give us more data, like who's applying, the rates of applications versus what's getting through, and able to look at many things and change the process so that we have an initial interview that is camera off and just speaking, just talking. So it's like an assessment of character, right? And we're asking questions about, how do you approach challenges, and tell me about, if I was to ask your family and friends, what's difficult about you, what would they say? And then on the flip side, what would they tell me then if I asked them what's amazing about you? It's like kind of like, do you know yourself kind of questions. And through that, then once someone's kind of made it through is this going to be someone who's good to work with, then a second round, that's a portfolio review. And that might be with a panel, with the hiring manager, etc. And we found that having that kind of and the camera off thing is so that we're not biased by, what's in their background or what they look like or what they're wearing or anything like that. Once you're kind of done that, then, let's look at the work more in depth and let them speak to it. So that is what you can expect from the process here. I can't speak to lots of other places, but we found that helped with diversity. It helps with not hiring people that then later are like a complete red flag on not wanting to work in a team. Like this is a big office and highly collaborative and cross matrix. And if you're kind of that person that loves to do that like solo work by yourself only, it's not going to be a great fit. And it doesn't mean that's bad, that's not, going to be a great fit somewhere else. It's just, we want to make sure it's a good fit for a team like this.
Well, that's the purpose of interviewing. It goes both ways. It's got to be, I'm always a big believer, if it doesn't work out, that's fine. There's going to be other things. Right? It
Exactly.
might suck in that kind of moment, but in the grand scheme of things, you can often look back and go, I'm glad I didn't get that job, because I wouldn't be here now. If I'd taken that, I would have been distracted and wouldn't end up with this opportunity like a couple of weeks later. But
or is this person interviewing here because they hate their current job? And that's the main reason that they're looking to get out. They almost don't care where they're going. That's another thing that I listen for. If they're like really negative, because you know what? Every job's going to have things, and I'm
Yeah.
not going to promise that there aren't things here. So,
Mm.
what are those things that they're struggling with, and are they going to find the same struggles here?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can ask questions like, so what could your current employer do to improve life? What would make your life better? What would make you less likely to come to interviews like this?
Hmm.
Because
That's
sometimes
interesting.
those are very, very easy things to fix. And quite often, yeah, I've seen it countless times over the years. People just get annoyed with a thing at work, which is, in the grand scheme of things, is quite trivial, but it's enough to wind them up enough that they go and apply for jobs. And then
Yeah.
before you know it, because they've got a great profile, they're into a bunch of processes and ultimately just wasting everyone's time, including their own, because
Mhm.
that little thing they were annoyed about yesterday isn't a problem tomorrow.
Or, it's something else
Yeah.
is going to be a difficulty at their next job.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in terms of dig in deep. Certainly from my stage, I try and get into those facts of kind of what's annoying you, what could they do better, what could the next role have. Look at all these assets. In fact, I'm probably spending more time on that than I am kind of the technical skills. It's
Hmm.
more like kind of what makes you happy, what's really important to you, because if that next opportunity isn't ticking enough of those boxes, or if your current employer can tick them and you just don't realize it, then should you really be looking for work right now? This,
Something you said there jogged
yeah,
jogged a thought that I had meant to express anyway.
okay,
That what to talk about when you're going
yeah,
through your portfolio and how to present yourself. And one piece of advice I have is to really talk about your impact. Um,
hmm
And you should be thinking about kind of your impact anyway across your career. Because, it's not necessarily about, oh, I had this title at this company. It's
hmm
more like, what did you actually do? Or what did you do on that
hmm
project? So being able to speak to what you individually did, even if it's, everything's like a group project when you're
hmm
in the real world. But I think so often people want to speak in we's and they want to give credit
hmm
to everyone, and that's fine. But point out exactly what you were responsible for, and that's kind of how I think about my work now. Like as a senior manager, I do get into projects still a little bit because I love it,
hmm
but for the most part, I get to see my impact through my
hmm
team or
yeah,
through changes in the organization or how I resourced correctly or approached a project, had
hmm
the team set up the project correctly. So my impact is very different than showing the glossy rendering.
hmm
But you still, at every level of your career, have to be able to speak to like what your role impact was
hmm
within that company.
absolutely, yeah. That comes up all the time, and it's one of my biggest tips. Yeah, for people that I'm setting up interviews for is, yeah, remember you're being interviewed. It's very unlikely they're going to hire your whole team, so focus on the impact you have. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes it can be, yeah, easy to fall into that trap. But then if you think about kind of, if you weren't there, what gap would be left by you not being there? And for some people that are struggling to think, well, what impact did
Ooh,
I
I
have?
like
It's like,
that.
yeah,
I like that.
imagine you were pulled away. What falls apart, or what doesn't happen if you're not there?
Mm-hmm.
And especially true as a leader of people. It's like you can let the team take a lot of the credit, but there's certain things that you're controlling and steering that, had you not been there, it's difficult for them to head in the right direction, or other things. So brilliant. So um, you wanted to talk about we touched on it earlier, and it was a very, very lovely segue, by the way, to get into your chosen topic of kind of looking at the success in design careers. Are there any other kind of angles that you'd like to look at in terms of what success looks like in design, that might not necessarily be the traditional, oh, I've gone from designer to senior designer to principal to head of, or I've worked for Apple or Google or whatever?
Yeah, so recently this has come up more for me of seeing my success based on who I've affected or influenced over the years. And with so many people kind of changing jobs and changing roles, it's hit me even more recently as people are coming out of the woodwork, or, folks that I managed ages ago that are, reaching out to say thank you, or noting me as someone who helped them progress. I mean, I have, recently there's a gal that reported to me starting as an intern so long ago, and now she's a senior manager at another company. And I mean, that makes me feel so great, right? Like that, maybe I had a little bit to do with some of that progression. And, that I think people who are people managers look for that. How am I developing others? And that means a lot of impact. Being able to write a recommendation for someone, even if they're at another company, it's like you had a role in giving them the right opportunities to prove themselves, giving them the right coaching. And so that's a skill in itself of developing others. And even if you aren't a people manager, you sure can mentor and have that kind of impact on others. So I think we tend to think about ourselves so much, but the influence you have on other people is a great measure of success in design.
Absolutely, yeah. It's such a wonderful feeling when you feel like you've had a positive influence on someone, like say whether as a mentor or as a leader. It's just lovely, isn't it? Just so
yeah, and to make sure you're giving that time, not only for your own network to continue to keep in touch with folks, even if you don't work with them anymore, but giving time to help other people. I think the design community is very giving, and we kind of are almost like brought up to think you should volunteer and give back and mentor and review portfolios and all of that. So I think it's embedded.
It comes around, doesn't it? You've certainly got to give more than you expect to receive. Is the way I've always looked at things. And you listen to podcasts of people in all walks of different business, and that same message comes through: give, and at some point you'll get back. But just don't expect that, because you'll do a lot of good along the way. And it's it's always how I've treated it. It's always worked well for me. The amount of conversations I've had with people who've called me up and say, Chris, you were really good to me like 6 years ago. You didn't even get me a job. You kind of gave me some great advice which helped me get another job. But I remembered that, and I wanted you to help me on this thing now. It's like, wow, that's kind of you don't think of anything at the time. You're just like talking to people, and then but it just has that lasting impact. So
exactly.
Fantastic. Okay, well we'll move on to the next section then. So particularly favorite design story, when either you can choose whether it's a good design story when something went really well, or a horror story when something went horribly wrong.
Let me see. I wrote down a few here.
I interviewed Tom Malloy recently, and he reminded me of a horror story where an interview I'd arranged for him. The guy went to do the CAD test, went out to pick up his. He said, "I just need to pop to the car to get my glasses so I can do the CAD test," and then never heard from him again. He just vanished. So. Yeah.
Just ran away.
Yeah. Okay. I finally got hold of him weeks later, calling off a withheld number, and then as soon as he realised it was me, he hung up on me. So.
I don't think I've ever run away from something, but there was a time at my last job where I had been leading this enormous strategic, let's reimagine the brand and the whole feature funnel project for months. I mean, this was like very much on the planning of the opportunity spaces and who are our personas, and like remaking everything. So I'm traveling to the headquarters to give the big presentation as an update. And what I didn't realize is that because I was at this like central design group and wasn't as looped in to the context of what was going on in that business unit, that some leadership had changed and probably wasn't very bought into doing this whole, redo of everything, or at least they didn't feel like, because they hadn't started the project, that it wasn't their baby. So I'm up there saying all the things, how it all makes sense, and I'm starting to get some very skeptical looks, and then I'm starting to get some questions like, why are you in design telling us, being a brand team, what we should do with our brand in the future? And then it was getting even more harsh. I could see people were closing up their stuff and getting up, and I'm like,
wow.
oh my God. And then you don't know, should I continue? I mean, I flew out here to give this presentation. We've been doing this for months. And my boss is in the room and just kind of called hey, let's everybody go get coffee and regroup. And we never regrouped, but it was the right thing to do. Yeah. I mean, to see what was happening in the room and realize you don't have stakeholder alignment anymore. You did, but now you don't. And we need to go back to the small group and relook at, is this the right project we should be doing now? Which, because you're so passionate about it, it's like the thing that was like the biggest thing you've been working on, and you just want to nail that presentation and you didn't think at all that it was going to be like people getting angry and like leaving the room.
That is extreme.
You went in thinking you were going to get yes, this is the future of our company. So, so learning moment.
All comes down to communication and preparation, I suppose, isn't it? In terms of the in my walk of life, if I haven't done a thorough discovery call, I could just go straight into a pitch and these amazing slides that I'm so proud of, and it just falls flat because I've focused on the wrong area, because I've made assumptions, or it's
getting that context is so hard. And I could say that some of that was on me, but some of that was also on those who are above me who maybe should have had more context of what was going on inside the leadership group, and having those conversations, like checking in on the nature of the project. And a failure of having the right context was what caused that one.
That'll be fine.
But I didn't go out to my car and never come back again. So call it a win.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. That's a great story. So, so quick fire questions now then. So, favorite book or podcast that you're into at the moment?
Yeah, so there's a series of books. They're a little bit older now, but I still really love them, from MIT Press, called The 12 Tomorrows. And they're collections of short stories that are about the future, but they're really well researched. So think like Black Mirror, but more optimistic, and you won't want to put it down. And then all of the authors that are on those short stories, you can just go look at all of them for this kind of future looking, kind of scares you, but in a good way type of stories. And then all the podcasts too I loved they're sort of well researched human stories, like Radiolab, This American Life, Freakonomics. Less so on the design side of things and more on this like makes me think about it all day long.
Yeah. Well, that's what you want, isn't it? When you're on your commute, or you just I listen to podcasts when I go for a walk, and just giving you stuff to think about, something poignant that just kind of makes you try something new or take a different perspective on something. But I'll definitely check out Radiolab and Freakonomics.
I'm realizing that those are all like produced in the US, and I probably need some recommendations coming the other way.
Mine
so I'll look for your list later.
So design ones that I like, there's Redacted. I quite like those guys. One of the guys who runs that I recruited years ago, so it's I didn't realize when I was listening to the podcast that it was him until he reached out recently, so that's quite nice. And then the other ones are all recruitment based, so probably no one's going to be interested on this unless they're just curious about what I'm doing. But there's the Alex Hormozi. I don't know if you follow him. He's building this business called Accenture. What's it called? Acquisitions.com. But he's written business books. Like, I've got one here called $100 million Leads, and there's $100 million offers. It's just about how to structure a business, whether it be services or products, and how to make it as attractive to buyers as possible. And
that's interesting. I do listen to How I Built This, which is like the founder's story, hero's journey kind of thing, but less on the practical, this is how I could do it.
Yeah.
So more of I was living in my parents' attic for 4 years before it exploded into a $1 billion venture.
Yeah, I like Alex Hormozi's quite on his podcast. It's basically his journal. He's just whenever he has a thought, he's putting it down onto the podcast and just sharing kind of his experiences. It's really good because he's just sharing how he's doing his thing and his view on the world. And some of it could be fairly controversial because he's a big advocate for work as hard as you can. If you want something, work your ass off for it. But I kind of get that when you have your own business, the line between kind of work and home, it's very blurry now, because it's like, why would you go into business and doing something if you didn't enjoy it and see it as part of your life? So I'm definitely not advocating working 100-hour weeks, but you do find yourself doing bits and bobs that you wouldn't do as an employee, I guess. But so yeah, Alex Hormozi, check him out. And then we've kind of covered some of the other quick fire questions that I would go through. But do you follow any kind of anyone on LinkedIn or Twitter or X, or whatever it's called, and any particular kind of standout social influencers?
Yeah, I mean, because of the nature of the work I do, I think the whole internet thinks I'm pregnant all the time. So I just get like lots of like mom, parent, humor products, that sort of thing. And, it helps me keep up on all of that. And, I do fill a lot of my socials with like humor, whether it's like corporate life humor or something. You just like, I need that at the end of the day. But from like a design standpoint, I like things that will show me maybe more of the art world, or things that are not necessarily industrial design. Street Art Globe, like Street Art Globe, I like that one. And then my new favorite one, and that's just like wild AI weirdness, is called Nice Aunties, which is just bizarre. But every time it pops up, I'm like, how did they make that? How did they do that? So yeah, you can enjoy that one.
Awesome. I'll ask you to send me these that list that you've got there, because I'll share those with LinkedIn after when the show's coming up. But wonderful. So final kind of minute or so, but and we'll wrap things up. Is there anything you want to shout out to? Anything you want to say or promote or anything? I guess as a final kind of thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. You mentioned at the very top, but I'm the chair of the Women Design Committee for IDSA, and our Women in Design Deep Dive is happening in June, end of June in Philadelphia. And the agenda and tickets and lineup and everything will be announced at the end of April, so look for that. And you can always find all that kind of information on my LinkedIn, or I'm at leastewart.com, or on Instagram at Lea Designs.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We'll make sure we include those all in the show notes and on the promo on LinkedIn. But Lea, thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to you, and good luck with the shows and everything. That sounds amazing.
Thanks so much. This was great. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening. I hope you really enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please like and subscribe and tell all of your friends. In the meantime, just a quick note from me. In addition to hosting this podcast, I'm also the founder of Kodu, a specialist recruitment business focused exclusively on physical product development. For a little over a decade now, I've worked exclusively within physical product design and engineering, helping startups and established brands hire mechanical design and development talent from mid-weight up to C-suite. I've worked in consumer electronics, e-bikes, femtech, medical devices, design consultancy, basically user-focused stuff. And it's the wonderful people I've met over the years that have inspired me to create this podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Kodu and how we work, please head over to teamkodu.com or message me, Chris Whyte,